All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a deep, fascinating, and honestly mind-bending scholarly debate about William Golding and the true meaning behind a book you probably read back in high school, Lord of the Flies. For generations, we've treated this novel as just a simple warning about how fragile civilization is. But what if that famous, shocking image of schoolboys descending into absolute violence on a deserted island was only the beginning of Golding's moral argument? Today, we're going to break down an incredible imaginary conversation between five top literary scholars to figure out what Golding was really trying to say about all of us. So, to tackle this massive question, I want you to picture a dark room. Outside the window, a tropical island is literally burning beneath a pitch-black sky. And inside this room, these top scholars are gathering to investigate one central mystery. Did World War II actually create William Golding's incredibly dark view of humanity? We know Golding served in the Royal Navy. We know he saw mechanized warfare firsthand. So the question these experts are asking right out of the gate is whether witnessing that terrifying level of destruction fundamentally rewired Golding's view of human nature, or if it did something else entirely. Let's start our dialectical investigation with Section 1, Creator or Revealer.
Okay, so on one side of the table, you have scholar John Carey. He points out that Golding's trauma in the Royal Navy essentially shattered his illusions. He saw exactly what highly educated, organized, supposedly civilized people were capable of doing to each other. But then, on the flip side, you have James R. Baker arguing no, the war didn't create that darkness at all. It merely revealed it.
The crucial point here, coming from Baker's theological perspective, is that the war simply exposed a deeply damaged human condition that had literally been there the whole time. As he so perfectly puts it, war stripped away flattering language. It didn't inject evil into humanity out of nowhere. It just made it absolutely impossible for us to keep using pretty, comforting words like civilized or innocent when we look in the mirror. But wait, bouncing right over to Virginia Tiger's psychological view, she counters Baker by asking this brilliant question. Did Golding distrust humanity, or did he distrust himself? She's suggesting that Golding's darkness wasn't just him, pointing a judgmental finger and accusing humanity from a totally safe distance. Actually, it was a terrifying confession of his own participation. He wrote this book as someone who was deeply afraid that he carried the exact same capacities for horrific violence as the people he was condemning during the war. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The illusion of innocence. Were they ever truly innocent?
Now, this brings us directly to the boys on the island. We almost always assume that British civilization taught these schoolboys rules, reason, and duty, right? We like to think the island represents this tragic fall from pure innocence. But what did civilization actually teach them? If you really look at it, competition, status, humiliation, blind obedience. As the scholars point out, Golding lets you, the reader, enjoy the cozy fantasy of the innocent child creating a pure society for a minute, right? Before he completely dismantles the whole shebang.
Virginia Tiger completely hammers this point home. She insists they didn't just arrive as untouched, natural creatures. The boys do not descend into violence after education fails. No, they bring their education with them. They brought strict choir discipline, rigid school hierarchy, and intense national pride straight onto that beach. The island isn't some blank slate at all. It's heavily contaminated by the adult world from page 1.
And this perfectly illustrates scholar Philip Redpath's structural argument. He says civilization does not remove darkness. It gives darkness language, ceremony, rank, and machinery. Basically, society doesn't cure our darker impulses, it just organizes them. Jack doesn't invent fear on the island out of nowhere. He organizes it. He gives it rigid procedure and a sense of belonging, which is exactly what the adult institutions that raised him do.
Which brings us to Section 3, the mask of civilization. To truly understand this dynamic, we have to look at the macro versus the micro. Think about that moment when the naval officer finally shows up at the end of the book to rescue them. His moral blindness is staggering. He looks at the total disorder of the children and actually feels embarrassed, saying British boys should have made a better show of it. He is completely 100% blind to the fact that his pristine adult uniform is just another form of Jack's tribal face paint. I mean, the guy is literally standing in front of a burning island while actively serving in a global mechanized world war. So it totally forces us to ask, did civilization cure the darkness, or did it actually cause it? The boys running around with their sharpened spears are simply a micro-repetition of the adults floating offshore with their massive warships. The island isn't a new fall from innocence,
It is just a smaller repetition of an older adult fall. The officer recognizes the wild disorder in the boys for sure, but he completely fails to recognize the eerie resemblance to himself.
As our imaginary scholars synthesize their debate on this first topic, they realize something incredibly profound. Monsters are just one of the stories people use to place evil elsewhere. Think about it. Pointing at the boys, blaming the island, or even labeling humanity as naturally monstrous is actually a massive self-protective trap. It lets us condemn humanity in the abstract so we don't have to look in the mirror and actually repent for our own actions. Section 4. Uncovering the rest. Look, what we've unpacked so far completely dismantles how we normally read Lord of the Flies. But honestly, this is incredibly just the doorway into Golding's much larger inquiry. We've literally only scratched the surface with topic 1 today, looking at whether the war created his worldview. In the rest of this imaginary conversation, these scholars completely tear apart other mind-bending questions. They debate whether the beast is just a psychological shadow or a political invention. They argue over Simon. Is he a Christ figure or a tragic messenger whose truth fails to cross the distance between one person and a frightened crowd? They even debate if Lord of the Flies is actually Golding's most misleading work. You absolutely must read the rest of this brilliant dialectical breakdown to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and to explore the rest of this amazing scholarly debate, you have to visit imaginarytalks.com/William Gadgald explained by top scholars. Trust me, it will completely change how you view William Golding, his later novels, and maybe even human nature itself. So the crucial takeaway here is this. Golding didn't just write a pessimistic book to tell us humanity is hopeless. He wrote it to strip away our flattering self-descriptions. I'll leave you with this final, truly provocative thought from the scholars. Once you lose the comforting belief in your own innocence, is redemption still possible? Think about that. Definitely go check out the full article, and we'll see you in the next explainer.